I'm your host Rob, and today we'll be reading Marriage/Engagement Photographers/Videographers of Reddit. Have you developed a sixth sense for which marriages will flourish and which will not? What are the green and red flags? A friend of mine is a fairly successful engagement/marriage photographer, as well as a relationship blogger. She can tell how in love a couple is based on whether they pay attention to each other during the photos of her, the photographer. I guess there's a contrast of sharing experience together versus fretting over optics. I've never heard her mention the specific red flags, but she speaks highly of couples who are willing to be silly and adventurous in their engagement photos, with those who are just willing to take the most glamorous/streamlined portraits. ETAs, she has specified she's a wildlife documentary style photographer. She doesn't pose people, she follows them around as they hike, rock climb, build campfires, whatever. That's why their attention is significant. It's supposed to be a candid experience and capture the natural dynamic. Photography here. You can tell somewhat based on how the couple treats each other on the wedding day. If they're respectful towards one another and toward me during a day full of stress, then I think that's a good indicator of being able to deal with other problems that may arise during a marriage. Wedding planner here. Red flags. Nerves are normal, but when one of the pairs starts doubting whether they should go through it way before the day, you know something isn't quite right. Green flags. They make decisions together and have each other's back, especially when the family can be pressuring. I used to help a buddy of mine do wedding videos back in college. I found the bigger the country hit they used for the wedding song, the shorter the marriage. Obscure songs seem to last longer. Ex-wedding photographer here. There were only a couple situations where I had doubts about the couple's future and one where I was certain. 1. I met the couple in a cafe to discuss their ideas and my services. The girl was very happy. She was very emotional and interested. The guy, however, was rolling his eyes and grunting at everything, and I stopped trying to get him involved in the conversation after he ignored me twice. It made the girl very uncomfortable, and she was apologetic of his behavior. I don't know what happened to them, as they apparently chose to reschedule their wedding and didn't hire me in the end. 2. I declined shooting a wedding when the person who was going to hire me was the groom's mom. When I asked her to arrange a meeting with the couple, she said that she didn't want a wedding, meaning they wanted to elope, and it was her initiative to celebrate it. I tried to play, I want to hear her bride's idea card, but she told me the bride has no ideas. She obeys the groom, and the groom obeys mom, so I only talk to the mom. So I declined. I hope the girl is fine. No one deserves a controlling mother-in-law. Finally, I was a guest and a photographer at my friend's wedding. The bridesmaid was wearing a short white dress, and she was chirping about her side hustle modeling for photos and catalogs. How her boyfriend saw her in so many wedding dresses, he won't be surprised she wears one to the wedding. And how she caught 8 bouquets already. This will be a 9. She talked a lot about wedding planning and stuff, but apparently there haven't been a formal proposal, and her boyfriend, who has been guessed well, looked very annoyed and clearly wished he was somewhere else. Anyways, the bridesmaids started bugging me for photos of her and the boyfriend after a week of the wedding. I told her several times that when I started editing the photos, I will do hers first, and by the time I sent her the photos, they were already broken up. She started dating someone else a month later and got married the next year. Cake artist here. I had a couple come in for a tasting. Appointment was for 7 p.m, but he was late. First half hour was just her. She told me that they met at a stable where they both kept their horses. These horses were going to be featured at the wedding, as the bride and groom would ride them to the site, a beautiful farm venue. She described in detail her self-designed in medieval gown, formal wealth in her hair, embroidered shoes like some for a museum. It sounded lovely. She wanted a cake like a castle, which was a specialty of mine. The whole wedding would be over the top, but not in a cringy way. Then he arrives, barely says hi to her, sits down and starts telling me about his wedding. Her bride in a dress as a riverboat gambler, with a frock coat, brocade vest, strong tie, big hat, gold pocket watch, and sterling silver spurs. He's fine with the castle cake, but wants to incorporate the watch and a pair of mother pearl handled pistols, picture given. I had already decided I was not going to work with them. No way would I come up with a cake that would work for them. But they were there, so I brought out the samples. For the next hour, they carried on 2 entirely separate monologues. They didn't address each other or me, and didn't listen to each other or me. I made no attempt to book them that night, and when they called in later in the week, I told them the date had been taken. They were living 2 incompatible and entirely self-contained fantasies. I doubt they even made it to the wedding. Photography here. I swear all the couples that have split up have smashed their cake in their significant other's face. None of the nice cake couples have, just my weird anecdote experience. Maybe it's a sign of respect for each other. Photography here. To me, the biggest sign is the cake cutting. Some people like to smear the cake everywhere as a joke. Some people don't. Usually the couple is in sync about this. They know what the other would like and they don't smush cake on the other's face if they don't want that. Sometimes one of them, usually the groom, will force cake all over each other's face and embarrass and upset them. I've seen this happen a handful of times, and all those relationships that I have kept up with have ended in a divorce. There is one particular venue that has a 100% divorce rate with our clients. It's a state park, which I've done Old Man Meadows. Used to be a wedding planner. Red flags: constantly apologizing for their other half's behavior/attitude. Lack of input from one of them. Too much input from a family member. Anger, inability to make a decision and stick with it. Overriding a once joint agreement of something. At one wedding, I didn't meet the groom till the day of. I just knew his name, Joseph. I did also when they're very young / have a small child and or haven't been together long. Green flags: when a couple mutually respects each other's wishes and compromise. Both are present at every meeting, supportive and patient, friendly and respectful of staff. When you can tell they're both relieved to see one another again and it's like no one else is there. It's like an unspoken conversation with each other and makes me smile. Ex-wedding photographer. Typically I saw red flags when the bride or groom is super quiet, silent and just watching. One instance was a groom who barely said 10 words to anyone during the ceremony or reception afterwards. The bride and mother were extremely loud and excited the entire time. The bride needed everything to be perfect. I dropped off the photo bundle with them 2 weeks later and he was still quiet. She, however, complained about all the pictures because the groom wasn't smiling enough. She wanted a discount because I couldn't make him look happy enough. They got divorced about a year later. I know this because I did his engagement photos with his new fiancée about 4 years after his wedding. His engagement photos showed him much happier. Photography here. I've done a few engagement photos and weddings. Red flags: when one person is critical of the other during the shoot, but then posts the photos with the caption, "About to marry my best friend and my soulmate." Also when they're badly photoshopped themselves and their partners appear better looking than they actually are. Green flags: a couple who can laugh together, when doing awkward poses, when they're wiping sweat from their foreheads, and when something goes wrong in general. Wedding videographer here. I don't usually follow the marriage all that closely after the video is delivered, but usually I have a feeling as neutral third party about whether it's going to last or not. While I agree most of the stuff mentioned here, I found that the microcosm of how the couple feels about each other comes usually during the cake cutting. If they're drinking, then they usually had a few by that point, and it's a moment when everyone's watching you do something potentially awkward with your new significant other. When I see a new bride or groom aggressively smush cake into the other's face, I usually feel that's a strong sign of an unbalanced relationship. Sometimes they're both having fun with it and you can tell it's really cool, but most of the time you can tell that the person with cake on their face is either shocked or angry about it. Again, I don't have a hard data to track results, but that's the thing that usually informs my opinion about how it's going to work out. Wedding videography here. I try to get to know both people beforehand so I can work in their hobbies / unique traits into my product. A big flag is when one person is clear trying to change the other. I had one dude who loved poker, craft beer, cigars, hanging with his rowdy friends, video games, etc. I planned a cool shoot where all his friends in an Old West saloon and he sees his bride to be, etc. Where she steps in and declares, "Oh, he won't be doing any of those things anymore." Poor bastard just sat there in silence as I awkwardly had to plan them shopping for a Yorkie puppy. Instead, halfway through post-production after the wedding, he called and said he was getting an annulment. I wanted to say, "I could have told you so," but I try to stay neutral. Green flags are just the opposite, embracing the other person's habits, hobbies, interests, basically not being a controlling freak show. Former wedding videographer. When doing the letter, read the bride at the end which said, "Well, that was stupid. I cut that part out in the final video."